over to you.
Okay, so again, my name is Dave Etkin. I'm the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. Our focus today is really to just take a look at some of the forms, walk through them a little bit, and help you get prepped up for making a disaster loan application. And then the bulk of our hour together, we just want to open up to Q&A. I know a lot of you folks have tried to work through some of these things. Maybe you have some issues that you've come across that maybe we can help with. So make sure you enter your questions in the little box there. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. What we do hope to do is to compile all those questions that you guys have asked. If we don't get to you today, we'll try to find the answers to those questions. We'll compile that into some sort of document or resource list. We have your contact information. We'll shoot that out to everybody, and hopefully that'll help people navigate this this going forward. So, Mike, you want to jump in and say anything here before we start looking at forms?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Yes, we understand how distressing all of this is for folks. We realize that there's a lot of information that is being updated continually. One of the things we recommend continually to check for those updates through the Louisville SBDC website and also through sba.gov.
Cool. Tony, you want to introduce yourself and say hello to everybody?
Sure. Thank you, Dave. Good morning, all. Thank you all for being a part of this. Again, I want to stress to you all that we are here to help. We understand that this is a very stressful time. And so thank you all for being a part of this.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. So as we get questions, we'll try to answer them, but let's first take a look at some of the forms. And we have included in the email that we sent out links to where you can download all these forms. And the forms are actually mirror the application process with the online application. And so, Mike, there's some recommended steps that we would need to take. I think we talked about earlier today about just being an only application now?
Yes, it is an online application, or if they choose to do so, they can mail in the application with all the appropriate forms. However, that is much slower. So the preferred method is online. Hopefully most people will find it is relatively easy. The recommendation, it's kind of a best practice. The forms that are needed, which Dave said had been emailed out or shared with you, we recommend that you print those out, fill those forms out, and then go online to apply. It's a 2-page application form. The rest of the screens mirror, as Dave said, they mirror exactly the forms you're looking at, and you can enter it much more quickly, complete it more efficiently, and save yourself probably some frustration in the process. So again, printing out those forms, filling them out, and then going back online and applying is probably a better process.
Yeah. Tony, you want to talk a little bit about what some of the information you found out as far as browsers and the phone line?
Sure. Basically, it's recommended the preferred system requirements are that you use Internet Explorer 10 or a later version. You want to make sure that you enable cookies and JavaScript and allow pop-ups when using this particular online application. I will say to you that you will, at the end of the application process, the SBA will send an email with your confirmation case number on there after you've completed all of the process.
Okay, and then we'll talk about that just a second. But so I think a lot of the feedback we've been getting that people have been having trouble is, I think it may be this browser and cookie issue that is causing some of the issues. So.
Yes, and I thank you, David. I did forget to mention that on the site, it does say specifically that people who are using Google Chrome have been experiencing some issues. So again, the preferred browser would be the Internet Explorer 10 or a later version.
Okay. All right, so we're getting some questions in, but before we jump in there, let's take a quick scan of these forms. And walk through a couple of them, and maybe that'll jog some your questions here. So we sent this out. This is a kind of this outlines this three-step process as we talked about. So here is the link where the application process starts right there. And Tony and Michael, just jump in whenever you can. Mm-hmm. The next step is, the SBA will review your credit and go through their underwriting process. The third step is there's physical damage, which I don't think anybody has any physical damage. So this is basically economic injury, the working capital loans, and kind of work through all that. Anything you want to add in here, Michael?
Yes, a couple of things. This document has been prepared for any type of disaster. Now, this is a very unique situation we have never dealt with before. They didn't have time to update this particular document. So a couple of things I want to point out. In step one, number 2, right there where it says in person at a disaster center, we do not have any disaster centers set up around the country simply because that would take thousands of people. And to do that means those people would not be able to actually be at the centers to process your application. So online is the preferred method, as I mentioned earlier, or you can mail in your application if you feel more comfortable doing that, just being aware that it's going to take longer to complete with a mail-in process. The other thing, this is a disaster for business situation only. If you go onto the website, sba.gov/disaster, you will need to find the state of Kentucky, in our case, and make sure that you check EIDL, which is Economic Injury Disaster Loans, and use it. There's some verbiage about coronavirus or COVID-19. There are several other disasters that are active right now for earlier disasters for things like mudslides and flooding. So ensure that you do apply for the correct disaster, which is the coronavirus one that we're discussing right now. And this is not for homes or renters or those kinds of situations. This is for small businesses only that have been impacted by this situation.
Good. Okay. Let's see. So let's hop over here. Sorry. So this is the where you can apply online. This is the website for that, and then here's the customer assistance service center number. We've been hearing from several sources that they are actually answering the phones fairly quickly, and they're very helpful. So Tony, you had an experience with them recently. Tell us about that.
Yes, one of my clients, he applied online, and when he got to the part where he needed to upload his documents, he couldn't figure out how to do it. So he contacted the customer service center. They were there and they were happy to help him. They made sure that he understood that they were available 24/7, and he was able to upload all of his documents properly and submit his application. And he's now just waiting for the rest of the process to continue. He's received his confirmation number and everything.
Okay, good. So Mike, I do have a question that's popped up. How long have you got any information as far as how long once they've received their application, whether they'll hear from the SBA or how long to close or anything of those? Is that still
Sure.
up in the air?
Well, again, this is unprecedented, so we're going to have millions of applications. We're confident of that, and they have staffed up as quickly as possible. These are folks who normally don't do this kind of work except in situations where a wide-based disaster happens. In other words, many of them, it's sort of like the National Guard. They have their day job, and when a widespread disaster occurs, then they're called in to work this process. So they're ramping up quickly for that, hundreds, thousands of people working on this. If not already, then very soon. As far as the application itself, when you go online and complete all of the required documents, you'll get notification that you have completed that. You'll get an email shortly thereafter. Within a couple of days, SBA should follow up with another email saying they've received your completed application. Typically, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to approve the loan or get the loan to the point of approval. It could go more quickly. However, if there are questions or if you didn't complete all the information, there'll be a back and forth. One of the things they recommend on several of the forms is to put several ways to contact you. Ensure that you have, if appropriate, your cell phone number, maybe a work number, several ways for somebody to quickly reach you. Email addresses, give multiple ones if you can, and that way it won't slow down the process for you. Again, it could take 2 to 3 weeks for the approval. Once approved, and you sign the document, the loan closing happens, they get the money to you within oftentimes 5 days or less, but typically 5 to 7 days. And that is a check directly into your account from the U.S. Treasury. This is not coming from a bank. It is not a typical SBA bank guarantee loan. This is directly from the U.S. government.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about the forms now. And over on the left box here that you're seeing kind of lists what you need to do. There's 2 forms. There's a form of SBA Form 5 and an SBA Form C. You'll also need this Form 4506T. And then there's a bunch of schedules and other things that that we need to have included also. Tony, did your client have any issues uploading forms? What was the process there?
They are a person that will admit that they are not tech savvy. So basically, when they got to that process, they actually reached out to customer service, and customer service walked them through it, and it worked out perfectly. They had no problems.
Good. That's really good to hear. Okay, so let's take a look at the forms first, and these are multi-page forms, and we're not going to go through every page, but a lot of the questions we've been getting now is basically on business structure and which form to apply first with. So right here we have what's called the Form 5C, which is for a sole proprietor. So the difference here is if you have an ongoing business, you use your Social Security as your business identifying number, and you file a Schedule C on your tax return. This is the one that you would fill out. And if you see on the bottom, it is this is page 1 of 6 we would fill out. Is that right, Michael?
Yes, that is correct, but realize that much of these forms has instructions attached to them. So in this case, I'm pulling that sample up that I printed out, and it's 2.5 pages long. A text box that mostly is information such as the name of your business, your address, your contact info, etc. The other thing is at the very top, right below the application number, etc., that you'll receive later. That's handled by SBA's disaster centers. It says, "Are you applying for?" And it says, "Primary resident, sole proprietor, or sole proprietor with an economic injury." Make sure you check box the third box, the one to the far right, sole proprietor, economic injury. If you're not a sole proprietor, and Dave will probably get into this in a moment, there's a different form, but asking very similar information. It's just called Form 5. Yeah, so don't get overwhelmed. Most of this is pretty basic stuff that is probably less onerous for you to deal with in, filing your taxes every year.
Yeah, this is Form 5 that I have up on the screen now.
Michael, Matt, I have a question that I received from someone that is a partnership, and yes, they wanted to know, do both partners have to apply, or can just one person apply?
Good question. I honestly can't recall the actual answer. I think the application is one application. However, both partners have to fill out all the other information
Got it.
on the other forms. You know,
Okay.
things that are relevant, such as there's a personal financial statement, for instance, is one of the forms, and it will say on there any partner or owner of 20% or more of the business is supposed to fill out and or sign the forms, depending on which form it is.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, can I step in here for just a second? I want to let folks know that maybe have been joining us after we got started. If you have a question, there's a small icon in the bottom of your toolbox that says Q&A. If you go ahead and type that in there, we see we have several questions already. But if you have a specific question, go ahead and put it on there. For folks who are on Facebook, we see that we're getting a lot of questions there, and we'll get to those in just a moment as well. So just want to let everybody know that.
All right. So let's pop through the rest of these forms here, and then we'll start answering some questions here for everybody. So the other form that needs to be filled out is this request for transcript of tax return, form 4506. This is fairly self-explanatory. You're just giving permission for the SBA to access your tax returns. Anything specific there we need to know, Michael? Or
no, that's pretty straightforward. They need to sign it, and the preferred way to do this, again, a best practice, is to sign that form, scan it into your computer, upload it with your application. You can mail that in, but again, that will slow down the process. So if at all possible, try and do the sign, scan, upload, and a process, and that will expedite things.
Yeah. We also included in the download, and as part of the package, is this personal financial statement. It's an Excel document, so it does a lot of the math for you. So it's pretty self-explanatory. If you've ever applied for credit before, you've probably filled something out similar. It's very important that you sign and date this, otherwise it's not valid. And up at the top, you're definitely not John Doe. Well, maybe that you are, but if you're not John Doe, please change where it says John Doe. And as of whatever today's date is, which you make the application, make sure you change that as well. If you are, most of your income comes from your business and you don't take W-2 income, you just take owner's draw, whatever, then I would put that under either other income as instead of wages. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I always start on this page because a lot of these cells roll up until that first page. So again, make sure you change the name up here at the top. There's not a signature line on this, but it's good practice to also sign and date this page. If you don't print it out all on one page, if you have to load up 2 pages, then I would sign and date both pages. And these are just.
And again, I'm sorry, I was just going to say again, if you're not a sole proprietor, but you are part of a business, LLC or partners or a C Corp, S Corp, anybody 20% or more owner of the business needs to submit a personal financial statement.
Yeah. Very good. Then we get into the schedules that have to be uploaded as well, the schedules of liabilities. These are all, existing loans, lines of credit, also accounts payable. So we've got trade debt, suppliers or 1099 wages, things like that. List everything here. Anything you need to add on this one, Michael?
No, that's pretty straightforward there. One thing I would say about that, Dave, is sometimes people don't have exact amounts. We understand, particularly when it comes to a disaster, natural disaster, sometimes the records are literally blown away or burned in a wildfire, for instance. There is a statement that says to the best of your ability that you're answering truthfully. SBA is not looking to get people in trouble, but try to do the best you can. And if you're not absolutely sure and feel uncomfortable, you can add attach a page that says, this is to the best of my knowledge, and I may be able in a few days to get more accurate figures. And you can always go back and amend that. They're certainly open for that. you know, if you just can't complete everything or you can't complete it with 100% accuracy.
Okay. Then lastly, and this kind of answers a question. Dave Pierce answered this question. How you doing, David? How do you prove economic injury? And this is kind of the form where you would kind of lay this out. So on this first page, this is a 2-page schedule. On this left column lists all the months, and then they went past, you know, past amounts there in current year to date on estimates on your income. The second page, going forward, this is kind of a projection. So if you notice here, the economic injury period here, so I'm not exactly sure what you should put in here. I think you have to make your best guess. You know, I'm thinking maybe, you know, 3 to 6 months. Wouldn't you agree on that, Michael?
Yes, at least, yeah.
And then this way you project out what your sales and net profit would have been, you know, for that period. That would be your economic injury going forward. And they will look back on these other schedules to kind of verify that, you know, suddenly you're not saying you're going to lose $1 million when your actual sales were a couple $100,000 a year. So.
Right, right. And again, as Dave had mentioned, you know, this is looking at perhaps the past 3 fiscal years and then year to date. There are a lot of businesses that don't have 3 years or 2 years. Some of them don't have but a few months of history. If you're in a situation where you can only put, you know, a year or less, use financial projections that you may have had before you started the business. Oftentimes, a business owner will go through that financial forecasting to either get a loan or just before they launch the business to see if it looks like it's going to be a viable, you know, business concern. And again, this is one of those situations, you know, where the SBA will look at what you put down here and ensure that it matches up. If you have filed taxes, it should be pretty much the same, except that's a total by an annualized basis. And if you're not absolutely sure, do the best of your ability. You know at the end of the year what maybe your sales were, but you may not know a breakdown every single month, and do an approximation if you have to, and put a note that this is an approximation, and you could probably get those records a little later to add. They're trying to help you with all this process, not to say no, but to help to say yes.
Yeah. Tony, you want to add anything?
Yes, I've been seeing questions about, is this loan applicable for nonprofits? And it is eligible for nonprofits. Also, I received a question, what are the repayment terms? The repayment terms are up to 30 years, correct, Michael?
That's correct.
And then also, I currently already have an SBA loan. Will this affect my ability to get the disaster loan? It's my understanding that you still can apply for this loan even if you already have an SBA loan, correct, Michael?
That's correct. Yeah, this has nothing to do with any business that may have an existing SBA loan. That's a different type of loan. Through a lender or a nonprofit that is done, depending on the type of loan, that in the past. So this is totally different, a different pool of funds, and having an existing loan doesn't disqualify you from applying for this loan.
And I don't know if we've done that yet, but did we already go over what types of businesses are eligible? Because that question keeps coming up quite a bit. Well,
in a word, virtually any for-profit small business is eligible. A private nonprofit is also eligible. So that's a lot of, you know, that's a whole lot of organizations that are included. And if you're just not 100% sure, go ahead and apply. It's not that difficult. It won't take you that much time. Better to get in the queue and let the experts at the disaster center look through all your information. And another thing I want to mention at this point, they'll go back and forth with you on the dollar amount that they determine that you're needing based on the impact. However, you know, if you feel like you need more, you can request that, and you can discuss that. But it's going to be based on the numbers you provide. And as Dave said, you're not going to get $2 million say your business does 100,000 a year. But the terms will be based on what it looks like your need is. If you don't need to go out 30 years, maybe it's a 10-year payment because it's a smaller dollar amount. They're going to work with you on all of that. And if it's a situation where you are approved for the amount and you decide later on, I don't want that loan or I don't need all of that, they're more than willing to adjust that, and that's a quick fix there. So they're very, it's a very easy negotiation in most cases.
So that takes me to a question from Matt. So do you think the credit verifications are relaxed, Michael?
Yes, absolutely. Again, this normally is a situation where the terms that you may see on some of the forms, credit elsewhere, where credit elsewhere is not available. They're realizing this is a very unique situation. Virtually the entire country, it's like a water faucet that was turned off almost instantly. So again, apply. If you're not 100% sure, go ahead and apply because they realize almost every business has been infected in a major, impactful way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Let's answer another question here. So, see, Kurt asked, how do we answer question 15 on the loan? Let's see. Question 15 is the amount of the estimated loss. So that you would use that last schedule to do that on your projected income loss or revenue losses there. So that's how you do it.
Yeah, again, I'm trying to pull up that form here to give them the form. It's always on the bottom of the stack, isn't it?
Yep.
Form 1368 is the one Dave's referring to. So go ahead and fill that out. And that's how they look. They look at lost revenue and they look at ongoing obligations, the liabilities you have, and then they look at the difference, and that's how they can help calculate the impact to your business.
Okay. So Kevin asks, and I think we talked about this, I currently have an SBA loan. Will this affect my ability to get this disaster loan?
No, it will not. And again, they are looking at deferments on existing SBA loans. I would contact whoever your lender is, whether it be a bank or a nonprofit, depending on the type of loan you got, and ask them about that. There can be deferments up to 6 months, perhaps up to 9 months. So talk with your lender and see if they can get that answered for you. It should be a quick answer from them.
I have a question here. It says, what if you haven't submitted your 2019 taxes yet? It's my understanding they can submit the most recent profit and loss statement, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they can. And if you haven't done your 2019 taxes that were going to be due very soon, those have been postponed through 3 months, I think 90 days. Submit your 2018. And if you have 2017, 2016, that'll give you 3 years worth. And then, you can submit your 2019s at a later time if they ask for it.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
So let me step in here and bring in some of the Facebook questions that we're getting. And I apologize if I go over something that you guys have already talked about because I'm trying to monitor both here. So installers that are 1099s, do they qualify as contract worker?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be
They
under
do.
the sole proprietorship form 5C, right?
Yes. 5C is the sole proprietor or contractor.
Okay. And we talked about filling out the schedule just to make sure how much money you can get. So it's not just the 25,000, it's, looking at the full scope of injury.
Yeah, Janet, that's a really good point. People had early on, they showed something that had 25,000. That is up to $25,000 is unsecured.
Right.
So if you need more money than that, they will look for something you can provide as collateral against the loan. You will not be turned down if you're not able to fully secure the loan. In other words, if you don't have enough collateral, they don't deny you that, but they'll look and see to the best of the ability you have to secure that loan. So again, they're working with you every way they can to say yes to what you need.
Folks are asking about the wait period. You guys,
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a very common question. I'll tell you, you're not going to fill it out today and get the check in 2 days. Because of the nature of this disaster, the huge magnitude of it, it's typically from the time you apply and you'll get the response back that everything is complete, that it can take 2 to 3 weeks, or I'm sorry, 2 to 3 weeks in some cases. There are some that they've already applied for, that they've already been approved or in process of being approved. So I can't tell you how long, but that's what they're shooting for, 2 to 3 weeks to approve the loan, and then a few days to close the loan and then get your money to you in your bank account directly from the U.S. Treasury, typically in 5 to 7 days. And they're working, as was mentioned earlier, around the clock, 24 hours, 7 days a week.
okay. Single member LLC, does that file as a sole proprietor or is it LLC?
To my knowledge, that's an LLC would be the Form 5. Dave, is that what your understanding of it is?
Yeah, yeah. So that
So
would not, yeah, not 5C, yeah.
Yeah, 5C is for a sole proprietor, an independent contractor. All other business types would be the Form 5.
Right,
So
Okay.
you don't have to fill both out. It's either or, either Form 5 or 5C.
right.
I have a question. Husband and wife own the business, so we both need to apply, question mark?
It's one application. I think in this case, since it's a situation with a spouse's ownership, you would probably provide that same information, for both of you. That when they need different personal financial statements and things of that nature, as if you don't both own certain assets, but oftentimes that's more for 2 different business partners or more who own 20% or more of the business. Then they need to provide additional their own personal financial statements too.
Okay.
Anything that you want to comment on, Dave?
No, I think that's true.
I've got a lot more questions, but I'll let you guys step back into your question and answer as well. And see
Okay. I got a good one from a good friend of mine I know. He is a foreign-owned corporation, 100% owned by the parent company in Japan, no individual owners. They're incorporated in the United States. They file U.S. corporate taxes? Can they take advantage of the disaster loan?
I believe that the answer is yes, but I'm not 100% sure. I would recommend that they contact either the disaster 1-800 number or the email for the disaster assistance program. Probably yes. I can tell you that an application is based on the physical address of where the business is located. Since they file U.S. taxes and they exist here, then my understanding is they are probably eligible. I can't promise, but that's where the experts can step in, and I think they are eligible, but can't say for sure.
Okay,
There could be other circumstances I'm not aware of.
good. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I've got a couple of questions. One is, if your business is currently in a Chapter 13, will you still qualify for this loan?
I've not gotten any information on that. I don't know. I would call the 1-800 number again or shoot an email to them. See, because the situation is this, when did you file for Chapter 13?
Got it.
If that was already in process before this occurrence, then you would probably not be eligible.
Okay. The other question is, if we lay employees off, could we still be possibly approved?
Yes, this has nothing to do with employees. In fact, one of the goals of this is so you don't have to lay off employees if that's at all possible, or at least you've got a way to ramp up quickly once this subsides. So the whole idea is you can use this money for anything that's business related, whether it's payroll, whether it's inventory, whether it's any, bills that you need to pay, insurance, rent, whatever. It's extremely flexible for just about any typical business expenses. And for many businesses, the biggest part of their expense is payroll.
Okay, thank
So
you.
even if the folks are laid off right now, you can use that as a way maybe to bring them back earlier than you might have otherwise been able to do, or maybe you wouldn't be able to bring them back at all if you really suffered a very challenging situation here.
So Mark asks, what if the full economic impact has not materialized to date, but we're experiencing declining sales? Should I wait to apply, or should I apply now to get in the queue?
Go ahead and apply now is what they're recommending, because the back of that one form, again, I keep putting it at the bottom of the stack. I think it's 4168 or 1368.
Yeah.
On the back, it shows estimated expenses, and then on the front, current year to date, and then for your history, if you've been in business a year or more, will show that probably your expectation is to do maybe the same, maybe better than the prior year or years. So go ahead. If they have any questions, they'll contact you about that.
Okay, good.
I have a question here from Tammy Hartley. Hi, Ms. Hartley. She states, if you own two different businesses, an S Corp and an LLC, does she need to apply for both businesses under two separate accounts, or is it one account? Or do you know?
I'd go ahead and apply under two separate
Okay.
ones. I think that's probably the better route to go.
Okay.
Okay. So here's a question. It says, when I filled out my app, I noticed it did not ask me how much money I would like to borrow. How is that determined?
Well, it's determined on what it is the loss you've incurred, and you can't tell yet what that is. They go by history, looking rear view what it was, and then try and look at it going forward. And again, if you have a situation where they offer you X number of dollars and you feel you need more or you lost more, certainly open to go back with them and discuss the situation. If you were on pace to have just a phenomenal year, and can have some kind of proof of that, say the first two and a half months of the year were great, or 2 months of the year, and you've got records of that you can provide, then go ahead and show them that, and they're just trying to help you. They're not, you don't say I want X number of dollars. They say based on your history, this is what you think what you will need. And they are open to negotiation. If you think you need more, you can talk to them about that.
Yeah, so that's why that form 1368, the projection is so important. If you need some help with that, Tony and I would be happy to help you guys work on those forms as well. So forgot to put our contact information up at the end there, so I'll do that a little bit later on. Let's see, Janet, you want to take a couple of your questions? Oh, I guess she's gone.
Yeah. Trying to get a.
Yeah, here's says, I own a mobile home park. Would I qualify for funding to cover maintenance, repairs, utilities, equipment? I don't have employees on payroll, only myself.
Again, yeah, any business is eligible. You don't have to have employees. That oftentimes is a significant expense. In your case, you were talking about maintenance and other things that have ongoing expenses that you can't pay right now. Because if the mobile park is not usable, or if you've lost some revenues, go ahead and apply.
Did we explain what the interest rate is? Because I've gotten several questions on that.
That's a good point, and I don't think it's been brought up yet. It's 3.75% fixed rate for the life of the loan.
Okay.
That's for profit businesses, and it's 2.75 profits. Yeah.
Yes, for a nonprofit. Yeah, a private nonprofit is eligible. Yes, as Dave said, that's 2.75% for them, and in small businesses 3.75%.
Yeah, and that's all a 30-year term.
Yes, 30 years.
I've got a question. Someone asked if if there's a prepayment penalty. So if you get that 30-year loan and then things improve tremendously, is there a penalty for?
Not to my knowledge. And again, that doesn't mean every loan is for 30 years. You may be in a situation, depending on how much you borrow, you may want a 5-year or 10-year or a 7-year term on it, or 3 years. It varies depending on your circumstance. So you don't have to take 30 years. Whatever the amount is offered, you don't have to take that whole amount if you don't think you need it. If between now and the time that decision is made, things have improved for you, then you can opt to take part or none of that. I don't think that's going to happen in too many cases, but it's possible.
Folks who are, they're not quite in business yet. So they put all the pieces in place. They're building out spaces and stuff like that. They've not acquired any, they haven't done any sales or anything like that yet.
They've just incurred expenses.
Yeah, so maybe they've already qualified for that SBA loan and they're already, the first loan, original loan from a bank or whatever, and they're not quite in business yet. So if it's a restaurant, let's say, that's all of a sudden can't really do what they expected to do.
Yeah, I don't know in that situation. If they have not been open for business, then they really don't have any lost revenue. The SBA loan or another loan that helped them to do what they're doing, say renovating or purchasing equipment. The real situation is how long before they can open their company. There could be an argument made perhaps for that lost revenue, but you haven't had any yet. Again, apply. Go ahead if you want to see if you're eligible. Go ahead and apply. Explain the circumstances as fully as you can. Provide the information that you need to that's on the forms, and you'll probably have somebody call you back. More than likely, in those kinds of situations, it's more appropriate to have a dialogue as opposed to communication by email, so they fully understand what your situation is.
Yeah.
I have a question here. It says, where do we list our future payroll? Is that considered to be a liability?
It is.
It is a liability if they owe the payroll. Not the projected payroll would go on Form 1368.
Yeah, on the back of 1368.
Okay.
But let's just say that your employees work 2 weeks and then we get the governor shuts us down. Well, that's a liability, so that would go on the other form, the schedule of liabilities, Form 2202.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's one thing you'll learn about the SBA. We have a lot of form numbers, right, Mike?
Lots of forms. It's not too bad, though.
No. But here's a question that's pretty important. Does the SBA have assistance in language services?
If they're asking about language services as in ESL and, not able to speak English as first language, they have lots of folks who speak different languages. So the answer is yes. On the call center, they have folks who speak Spanish, various dialects of that, Chinese, Vietnamese, multiple languages from Europe, Asia, Africa. So that should not be a problem.
I have one more question about the schedule of liabilities. They want to know, do you put personal, business information, or both?
That's unclear to me, but I would put both just in case, and delineate between the personal and the business. Maybe put the personal on a separate sheet. This is only to pay back lost debts, but it might help illustrate the situation you're in with your other personal obligations as well.
Right, especially if all your income comes from your business, then.
Absolutely, which is very often the case.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get this loan to pay your home mortgage, but it might be able to allow you the ability to pay, because that would have been what you might have earned in your business had it not been for the disaster.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Here's a couple quick ones. Is an S Corp considered a sole proprietor? The answer is no. And Michelle asked, what if I've changed it from an LLC to an S Corporation for the 2020 tax year? You would still use Form 5. You're not a sole proprietorship. That's the only delineation. And so that is it. Go ahead, Tony.
Are there any fees associated beyond interest and principal?
No, there are no fees to apply. To my knowledge, no other fees at all,
Okay.
other
And
than principal and interest.
okay. And then what if you were at a loss in 2019? If your business had a loss in 2019, should you still go ahead and apply?
Go ahead and apply.
Okay. And just show the loss?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let's see, does the credit score affect this process, Mike?
They don't look at credit scores. That's not what this is about. This is not a typical loan that you get from a lender. They're looking at your circumstances with your business and the disaster.
Okay. And these turn into grants, or this is going to be a loan?
I'm sorry. Let me back up and correct that.
Okay.
What I should say is that they do look at that, but they are relaxing that standard. You know, I don't even know what the credit score cutoff is in this situation. I do know they've said that they are relaxing those standards, but they do have to have some minimum parameters to look at.
Okay.
Here-
And these stay loans. They don't turn into forgivable loans or grants, correct?
No. There is discussion about another bill through Congress for some forgivable loans, or some people call them grants. SBA is not able to do grants. There is discussion about forgivable loans, but that's a totally separate pool of funds, and that has nothing to do with this particular situation with SBA loans.
Okay.
So I have this question. Rather than a separate SBA loan, can this be a refinance of an existing business loan?
It cannot. You can't use money from this loan to either pay off another loan or consolidate multiple loans. This has to be a standalone situation.
It's my understanding, though, that you can use the proceeds to pay like a payment towards another loan, correct?
I don't think so. Well, it could be another loan that's an obligation of your business,
Right.
your current business situation, but you can't consolidate loans. For instance, if you got another loan at 5.25%, you can't use proceeds from this at 3.75% simply to pay off that higher interest loan.
Exactly.
Need to be careful with that, and they'll explain all of that when you talk with them, and you may have some discussions about that.
So I got a question kind of on that from Christina. How you doing? Can a small business apply if it has an existing commercial line of credit in case they needed additional funds, or can show the need of additional funds?
Absolutely, and it can go both ways. If you got a relationship with your lender, you may talk to them about either boosting a line of credit you currently have with them, or having another line of credit established in addition to this. You know, it's one of those situations, again, where if you are able to get money more quickly through a lender with a line of credit that you can establish and get open in a matter of days rather than waiting weeks, you might make that business decision to go that route, even if the interest rate is a little higher because of your circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
But one doesn't preclude the other. One doesn't knock you out from the other.
Good.
Here's a question. How long after the loan does the repayment begin? So after you get your funds, how quickly did you repay?
Typically, they have a deferment of up to 4 months. I just saw something this morning that they're looking at extending that quite a bit longer before you make your first payment. I can't say definitively, but that is the hope that it will be even a longer period if you need that.
Thank you.
Okay. Janet, you got anything from Facebook?
Dave came back in to say, so he can't use this loan to make payments on an SBA 7A loan.
Well, again, if that is the loan for this business from 7A, I would talk with your disaster folks, because that's an obligation for your business. Just as it would be for payroll, rent, and other things. In that situation, possibly, probably, but again, get clarification from those folks.
And that percentage rate is not going to be any higher than the 3.75.
No, that is the fixed rate right now.
Right.
They look at that. It's set through the Treasury. They do that quarterly. So right now for this quarter, it's 3.75%.
And how is the length of the term determined?
It's every situation's different, Janet. So in many cases, they look at the amount of money borrowed, the financial situation of the business prior to this event. And they have ways, because they've been doing this for decades and dealing with millions of other situations, not quite like this, but similar to this. So they've got a lot of data to draw on, and in most cases, they're pretty accurate in determining, depending on the amount of money you borrow and your circumstances, they're going to make it pretty close. So if it's a situation where you want it to be 10 years and they say 8.5, you can talk about maybe stretching out the life of the loan as well. But again, it's based on your own individual circumstances. And that's part of what takes a little longer to make sure it's right for you and your business.
Okay.
If we've applied for unemployment in our grantees, it would be able to use this to fill in the gap in income. Sorry, that was a.
Well, if they're eligible as a private nonprofit, my understanding is yes. Depends on that. It would probably be a circumstance where you're providing services and getting reimbursement at a later date. So again, they should, as a nonprofit, just to make certain, not all nonprofits are eligible. They listed as private nonprofits. And we talked in, the person may not have heard the very beginning of the conversation we started with
Right.
about which type of nonprofits are eligible. So again, I would encourage those folks, if you're not sure, to go ahead and call the Disaster Center, the 1-800 number that's on some of these documents, and make sure.
It wasn't about being a grant recipient. The question she corrected, it says, if we've applied for unemployment and are granted it, would we be able to use this to fill in the gap in the income?
Oh, I see. Gap in the income? Does she mean, in other words, to bring employees back? I'm a little confused. She's saying unemployment and filling in a gap. I'm not quite sure what she's asking. Do you understand, Dave or Tony?
I would say it's probably, if they go on unemployment, then to reduce, the fixed expenses to their nonprofit or their business, then they would use a disaster loan to cover other things, but they could pay themselves as non-employees now from the unemployment insurance, but still keep their nonprofit and work there and whatever. I think I'm assuming that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Type that question back in on the chat or Facebook, and let's get some clarification for you.
Okay. She says my own. She says my own. That make it
Her own business.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will address that specifically to the questionnaire later. We also have on the Facebook page, we have some personnel that are helping from our state office to answer some of those questions too, so we can kind of keep up with that. I do have a question from Timothy. It says, if we had to lay off employees, can we use loan proceeds to make up the difference in what the pay difference was?
I haven't seen any clarification on that. I don't know. That would be a question to ask them, because there are a lot of things changing right now with unemployment, state by state. So possibly, I wouldn't say definitively yes. Particularly if you're wanting to hold on to those employees. I understand why you're asking that question, to try and make them whole in the interim. But I don't know. You don't want to have folks who might be jeopardized with their unemployment because of that income. So just look into that. Be very careful with that before you move forward.
I do have a question for someone who's already submitted information, but wanted to know, how do we go about correcting information if you need to change it?
You should have your identification number for this particular situation.
Mhm.
I think there is a way to go back. I can't recall if it's called amending, or there's some terminology similar to that, amending your application. If you don't see it on the website, call them or email them and tell them, and that's going to happen often, where you've gotten, the luxury of a day or two and picked up some additional information. Better to catch it early on in the process. That helps from slowing things down later. So I'll call them or see if you can see. I believe you can go back in there and check your progress. There might be a button to amend prior documents submitted. And again, the sooner the better.
I have a question here, Michael, where they say we are a trucking company and we are only dealing with loss on revenue. And it's in regards to question 15 on the disaster loan. What category should they use?
I'm not sure what question 15 on the disaster loan is, frankly. So
the one where they project the economic injury, and basically it goes back to that form 1368 where you project forward on what your losses are going to be. And again, as Michael said repeatedly, that they'll look at your past performance, and you're going to have to project and guess what, based on what you know in the future, what those injuries would be, is what you're going to lose. You'll notice when you look at that form at the bottom, it allows you to add additional dialogue where you'll explain the situation where maybe last year we didn't have that good of a year, but in January we got a really big contract and now we're on hold on that. So we lost all that income. We've ramped up for that. So that's kind of how you do that. So at the very top of the form 68, when you show, the range, that's where I would do that. Maybe you start in January and project forward from there. And again, I guess the underwriters will dig into that and kind of make that determination for you.
Right.
Based on show them.
I have a question about folks that are, sorry, where's it at? Independent contractors that are rideshare drivers, like Uber and Witten.
That's 5C, isn't it? Form 5C.
Yes.
I've
And
seen.
again, they'll just have to project forward what their loss would be based on the sudden drop in income that they're experiencing.
Okay.
And this is for Rodrika O'Bannon. She just wants to know which form needs to have personal and business information. That was in regards to the schedule of liability when we were talking about that, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the.
So I got a question from Kathy. I haven't seen Kathy in I don't know how long. So how you doing? Good you're popping up here. So she wants to know, is it better to download copies of past tax returns required and upload them, or will the request for transcript of tax return, is that all she needs to do?
I believe somewhere in there that says that you can, and I believe they encourage you uploading, the basic documents from your tax returns. There's a lot of information on a couple of those forms that'll tell you, again, best practices. Anything you can provide uploading to the secure website is just going to expedite the process, as opposed to waiting for another agency to get all that information to SBA.
Yeah.
I've got a question here from Sam Winkler. Hi, Sam. Haven't talked to you in a long time.
Hey, Sam.
He wants to know, he said, hey, there's no discussion of collateral. Are these loans unsecured?
I think they're unsecured.
Up to 20.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Up to
25,000 unsecured. Third time's a charm. Go ahead, Dave.
Up to 25,000 unsecured. Above that, yeah, it'd have to be secured for the guarantee and collateral, some sort of collateral. Yeah.
But as Sam knows, SBA's not required to fully collateralize these loans, just as they are not required to with other types of SBA loans. So this disaster loan, it's not going to be denied because of lack of being fully collateralized.
Yeah. And on top of that, any owner that owns more than 20% will still have to sign the personal guarantee, as always.
Quick question here. Has a business owner that's been in business for 19 years and they've never applied for a loan, so they're very new to this. They wanted to know, is there a form used to submit a financial statement?
Some of these documents, in one of them, I believe there are about 5 or 6 of these forms that David put out. One is a financial statement, but I think you have another one that you'll have that's actually a little easier to use because it pre-calculates everything. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes.
Yes. And then also the second question is, does a past bankruptcy mean you can't apply?
To my knowledge, no. That has nothing to do if you got a business, say in the last few years, and that's been a viable business, but your bankruptcy was 7 years ago. That's not going to knock you out of consideration.
So I got a question. I got several questions from several people. It says, basically, you guys keep talking about Form 1368. Which one is it?
Can you show that, Dave?
It's this one. And if you look on the bottom of your form, right down here in these very little, oops, on this side, this very little thing, it says SBA
Yep.
Form 1368 right there. All about
Yeah, that's a good point that we should have brought up. All the forms that we're mentioning, Form 1368, the Form 5C or 5, the other forms, that's all, I believe on all of these, the bottom left corner of every one of those forms.
So I have a question here from Kevin Gillespie. Hi, Kevin. He says, my labor force is very technical and I cannot afford to lose anybody in this downturn. I am paying my employees full salary using my line of credit. I'm worried about not having working capital when this subsides. Can I use this money as working capital?
It can be used for any kind of working capital needs as long as it's business related, whether it's payroll or other things that you have, Kevin. Yeah. It's very flexible.
Yeah, that is the true definition of working capital. Yeah. So what are the credit score requirements? Have you got any guidance on that, Michael?
I don't. Again, that came up a little earlier. They look at the credit scores. It's not as, the level is not as high as it is for a typical commercial bank loan or other types of loans or SBA loans even. It's more relaxed. That's an internal decision they make depending on the circumstances. I can't tell you what the cutoff score is. I don't know that they actually have one. So again, in every case, if you're not sure, go ahead and apply. Some people say, well, I want to know first so I don't go to the trouble for nothing. Nobody can predict the future. You know, if so, we wouldn't be where we are now for a lot of us. So point is, go ahead and apply. And if you have some questions along the way, pick up the phone and call them or email them.
Janet, you want to throw in a couple Facebook questions out here?
We have quite a few. And so what if you are a realtor, own the brokerage? Are you able to apply as the LLC sole corp?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. If you needed, say, 100,000 instead of the 20% standard, are you requiring 10% collateral? If you're a disabled veteran, is that waived?
Well, back up to the first one. This is not like a typical SBA loan. So they don't look at it that way. They look at what you have lost.
Right.
And in most cases, it's a natural disaster. So you have assets you've lost. In almost all cases, it's revenue for most people that they've lost. So they don't look at it. I may misunderstand the question, but the way I'm understanding it, they're looking at what you would have had in revenue that you no longer can have. So that's what they look at. And you're not having to put 10% in to get that money. You get what you show you need to get you back to where you probably would have been had this not occurred. Dave, am I missing something there?
No, I don't think so.
Quick question.
What they're really referring to is an SBA, probably a 7A loan that they're thinking of. This is, again, totally different. This entire program is totally different than the regular 7A lending. This is for disaster recovery only, economic impact disaster loans.
Right.
One more question, you all. My question earlier about what do you mark? Question 15 is about what type of business you have. It says the only options to mark are real estate, machinery and equipment, inventory, and leasehold improvements. None of those are going to apply to his trucking company. So should he leave it blank?
Which form is this?
It says on the application, the business loan application.
application.
Question 15. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There should be at the very top or somewhere in that area something that you can check the box, economic impact disaster loan, or EIDL. That's what they want to look at for the application for this loan.
So do they leave it, the only options to mark are real estate, machinery and equipment, inventory, and leasehold improvements. None of these are going to apply to him. So does he just need to leave it blank?
Yeah, so question number 1 on the business application is which loan you're applying for, as Michael said. So if you click, he checks economic injury, the EIDL, then a lot of these other boxes don't apply because they are for real property or business contents, which is not the case. What we're working here, these loans are for working capital, which means there's no actually any physical assets that are damaged at all. This is just for loss of business or things of that nature.
So they leave it blank?
Leave it blank.
Thank you.
Well, when they check the EIDL box, then as Dave said, a lot of the questions you're looking at the beginning go away.
Yeah.
So again, it's very important to remember that you need to check that box and need to match it up with the Kentucky COVID-19 coronavirus disaster declaration. It will automatically pre-fill some of these text boxes and once you do that.
Okay, good. Janet, got anything else?
We have numerous questions, but I think we're pretty much out of time to do that. Do you want to put up your contact information and website stuff, Dave, on share that with people?
All right.
Also do on Facebook, we'll start having our team go back in there and answer questions specifically. If not, you can email Dave and he'll share that with us to kind of split up all the workload here.
Yeah. Well, we hope we've answered some of your questions. Here's our contact info. Please reach out. We're here to help. We're here to do whatever we can for you guys. We're all in this together, as we keep saying, and you know, we're all our services are free, so please take advantage of us. There's only you know, our workforce is not huge, but we're very willing. So please reach out to us. Michael, anything else you want to add?
Well, I was just going to say, there's just, you know, 2-3 of you that can handle a lot of these questions, but stressing to folks to also contact the Disaster Assistance Center directly.
Yes.
That may expedite it. There are hundreds, as I said, hundreds, maybe thousands of people now answering questions from all across the country, and they're very experienced at this and have done it before. So that's a good team you have there, Dave, but you're not, you know, you can't do it all. So a lot of these questions are very basic to those folks that deal in this world all the time. So you've got an army behind you to help you with that at the Louisville SBDC. And
I will say that the local SBA folks, Michael, you and Robert and Dana and Sharon and Tommy, I mean, you guys have been working 24/7, and I really appreciate everything you guys have done for us in the community. It's been really, really, really good.
Are there any other upcoming Q&A events, Michael, that you're aware of that are available to the general public that
Yes, we do have one scheduled tomorrow at 2 p.m. It's through the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. The individual Kentucky Chamber of Commerce members are banding together across the state. It's a similar platform. I will go through some of these forms for those that are interested in actually seeing those that may not have seen it yet. We'll do a Q&A session and a quick overview, and then about an hour of walking people through the actual screenshots of the forms and the website. Again, that's 2 p.m. tomorrow Eastern time. They, to my knowledge, haven't sent that out yet, but if you're a member of one of those chambers, you probably will get that info shortly.
Okay.
I believe it's on Zoom, very similar to Facebook Live here.
Okay.
One last question, and then I want to share my contact information with people as well. If you have more than one company, again, you can still apply for both companies, right?
To my knowledge, yes, each company was impacted.
Okay. And so thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick so that you all can have my contact information. So Dave, thank you, Dave.
Sure.
So feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm here to help.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Please, good luck out there. It's everybody's in the same boat, so let's all work together, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.
Right.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Bye.